Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a woman standing at the edge of a vast river, its waters flowing endlessly, reflecting the sky above. She pauses, contemplating the currents, and in that moment she chooses not to wade into the waters simply because others tell her to. She chooses herself. To choose oneself is not an act of defiance for the sake of rebellion. It is an act of profound realization. It is the recognition that, like the river, one's life has its own natural course. The world may demand that you bend to its will, conform to its structures, and sacrifice your essence for its fleeting approval. But this woman, she understood that to abandon herself would be the greatest loss of all. Her choice was not without struggle. Society teaches us to equate self-prioritization with selfishness, as though to nurture one's soul is to deny others. But she knew the truth that only when the heart is full, the mind at peace, and the spirit whole can one truly give to the world. For what can an empty cup offer but thirst? She did not walk away from her responsibilities, she walked toward her authenticity. In doing so, she discovered a paradox: the more she chose herself, the deeper her connections became. Her relationships flourished, not because she clung to them out of duty, but because they were nurtured by the light of her genuine self. You see, life is much like the river she stood before, constantly flowing, ever-changing. To resist its current is futile, but to surrender entirely is to drown. She chose a middle path, carving her way with the currents, not against them. In doing so, she didn't become separate from the world, she became a part of it, moving with its rhythm. And so she became whole. Not perfect, for perfection is but a construct of fear and comparison. She became whole, embracing both her light and shadow, her strength and vulnerability. In choosing herself, she gave permission to others to do the same, inspiring them to step into their truth. The woman who chose herself did not do so out of selfishness. She did so because she understood that to live authentically is to live fully. And in living fully, she gave more to the world than anyone could have asked of her. Self-discovery is not a destination, but a continuous journey, a profound and winding path that we walk throughout our lives. It begins with a question whispered in the quiet moments: who am I really? At first the question seems simple, but as we peel back the layers, we find it is anything but. From the moment we are born, society begins to shape us. We are given names, roles, and expectations that tell us who we are supposed to be. We learn to define ourselves through the eyes of others: parents, teachers, friends, and strangers. These influences are not inherently wrong. They provide us with the tools to navigate the world. But in this process, we often lose sight of who we are beneath the labels and masks. The journey of self-discovery starts when we begin to question these inherited definitions. It is a brave act to step outside the familiar narratives that have been given to us and to ask, what do I believe? What do I desire? What brings me joy? These questions are not easy to answer because they require us to confront parts of ourselves we may have ignored or forgotten. This journey is not linear. It does not follow a straight road, but winds through valleys of doubt and peaks of clarity. There are moments of triumph when you feel as though you've uncovered a great truth about yourself, only to find that it raises even more questions. This is the nature of self-discovery. It is an unfolding process, much like the blossoming of a flower. Each petal reveals another layer, another facet of your being. One of the most challenging aspects of this journey is learning to sit with uncertainty. The world often demands that we define ourselves quickly and decisively, to fit into categories and identities that make sense to others. But the truth is that self-discovery requires patience. It is like searching for treasure in the depths of a vast ocean. You must be willing to dive deep, to face the murky waters of your fears and doubts, and to trust that clarity will emerge. Along the way, you may find that the person you thought you were no longer fits. This shedding of old identities can be unsettling, even painful, but it is also liberating. Just as a snake must shed its skin to grow, we too must release the roles and expectations that no longer serve us. This process of letting go is not an abandonment of the past, but a transformation, a way of honoring who we have been while making space for who we are becoming. The journey of self-discovery also teaches us to embrace contradictions within ourselves. We are not static beings, we are dynamic, ever evolving. We contain multitudes, strength and vulnerability, certainty and doubt, joy and sorrow. To discover oneself is to accept this complexity, to hold space for all parts of your being without judgment. Ultimately, self-discovery is about coming home to yourself. It is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning. It is about listening to the quiet voice within that knows your deepest. To defy norms is not an act of rebellion for its own sake. It is an act of immense courage and self-liberation. Norms, the unwritten rules and expectations of society, provide a sense of order and predictability. They tell us what is acceptable, how to behave, and what paths are considered right. While these structures can be useful, they can also be stifling, especially when they demand conformity at the cost of individuality. The courage to defy norms begins with awareness. Many people move through life adhering to societal expectations without question, assuming that these norms are absolute truths. Yet there comes a moment of quiet, unsettling realization when you begin to question whether these rules align with your values, your desires, and your authentic self. This moment marks the beginning of a profound internal conflict, the pull to fit in versus the yearning to break free. Choosing to defy norms is not easy because these norms are often deeply ingrained. They are reinforced by family, friends, institutions, and the culture at large. To step outside them is to risk judgment, criticism, and even rejection. The fear of being ostracized is a powerful deterrent, one that keeps many people bound to lives that do not truly fulfill them. It takes extraordinary bravery to stand up and say, "I choose to walk a different path." This courage often comes from a place of inner necessity. There is a point where the cost of living inauthentically becomes too great to bear. You may find yourself feeling restless, unfulfilled, or disconnected from your true self. These feelings are not signs of failure, but of awakening. They are your soul's way of telling you that it is time to break free from the confines of societal expectations and forge your own way. Defying norms is not about rejecting everything that society values. It is about discerning what is meaningful and authentic for you. It is a process of questioning, why do I believe this? Why do I do this? Who am I trying to please? This questioning can feel destabilizing as it challenges the foundation upon which you have built your identity. But it is also profoundly liberating because it allows you to construct a life that is truly your own. The act of defying norms is often misunderstood. Others may see it as selfish, reckless, or rebellious. But those who have the courage to walk this path know that it is not about rejecting the world, it is about reclaiming yourself. It is about living in alignment with your truth, even when that truth is inconvenient or uncomfortable for others. This path requires resilience because the world does not always welcome those who step outside its boundaries. You may face criticism, skepticism, or even hostility. But in these moments, courage becomes your anchor. It is the reminder that your worth is not determined by the approval of others, but by the integrity with which you live your life. The courage to defy norms also inspires others. When you choose authenticity over conformity, you become a beacon of possibility. You show others that it is not only okay but necessary to question the status quo, to live a life that reflects your unique essence. Your courage creates a ripple effect, encouraging those around you to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery and empowerment. Defying norms is not a one-time act, it is a lifelong practice as you grow. At first glance, the idea of autonomy, standing independently, making choices guided by your own will might seem in opposition to connection. It's easy to think that to prioritize your own needs is to reject the collective, that asserting your individuality must come at the expense of unity. But in truth, autonomy and connection are not opposing forces. They are deeply intertwined, creating a dynamic interplay that enriches both the individual and the whole. Interconnected autonomy begins with the understanding that to be authentically connected to others, one must first be true to oneself. It is only when we embrace our individuality, our unique desires, strengths, and perspectives that we can form relationships rooted in honesty and mutual respect. When you show up as your authentic self, you invite others to do the same. This is the essence of meaningful connection, not losing oneself in the collective, but contributing to it from a place of wholeness. To achieve interconnected autonomy, one must first break free from the illusion of dependency that often governs relationships. Dependency tells us that our value comes from pleasing others, that our worth is tied to their approval. This mindset breeds resentment and stifles growth because it requires us to sacrifice our true selves to maintain connection. Autonomy, on the other hand, allows us to stand firm in our identity while still engaging with others from a place of love and respect. Yet autonomy is not isolation. True autonomy recognizes that we are not islands, separate and self-sufficient. We are like trees in a forest, each standing tall and distinct, yet deeply connected through unseen roots. These roots symbolize the shared human experience, our need for love, understanding, and belonging. Even as we assert our individuality, we remain part of something greater, a web of relationships and communities that sustains and shapes us. In this interconnected state, boundaries become vital. Autonomy without boundaries is chaos, connection without boundaries is suffocation. Boundaries are not walls to keep others out, but bridges that define how we relate to one another. They allow us to say, this is who I am and this is how I wish to be treated, while also respecting the autonomy of others. Healthy boundaries create space for both individuality and connection to thrive. One of the most beautiful aspects of interconnected autonomy is the realization that our individuality contributes to the collective. When we embrace our unique talents, passions, and perspectives, we add richness and diversity to the world around us. It is through our differences that we learn, grow, and evolve as a society. To honor one's autonomy is not to turn away from others, but to offer them the gift of your authentic self. At the same time, interconnected autonomy teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not the center of the universe, but part of a vast, intricate web of relationships. Our actions ripple outward, affecting those around us in ways we may not always see. Autonomy without this awareness can become selfishness, but interconnected autonomy keeps us grounded in our shared humanity. This balance is not always easy to achieve. There are times when the desire for connection may tempt us to compromise our autonomy, and times when the pursuit of autonomy may lead us to withdraw from others. The key is to remain mindful, to continually check in with yourself and ask, am I honoring my truth? Am I respecting the truths of others? In embracing interconnected autonomy, we discover that the more we nurture our individuality, the deeper our connections can become. It is a paradox. By standing firm in who we are, we create the space for genuine connection to flourish. This is not about selfishness or self-sacrifice, but about creating a harmony where both the self and the collective are honored and enriched. Ultimately, interconnected autonomy is a dance, a fluid and ever-evolving balance between self-expression and connection. It invites us to live authentically while recognizing our place within the greater whole. It reminds us that we are both individuals and part of something larger, and that in embracing this duality we find not only freedom but also belonging. Sacrifice is a word that carries a certain weight, a moral gravity that compels admiration. It evokes images of selflessness, of giving up something valuable for the sake of others. Society has long glorified sacrifice, especially when it involves setting aside personal needs or desires to serve a greater good. But beneath this noble veneer lies a question worth exploring. Is sacrifice always what it appears to be? Or is it at times an illusion, a story we tell ourselves about what we must endure to be worthy of love, respect, or belonging? The illusion of sacrifice begins with the belief that to give to others, we must diminish ourselves. It suggests that our worth is measured by how much we are willing to relinquish our time, energy, dreams, or even our identity. This mindset can be deeply ingrained, taught to us through cultural narratives, family expectations, and societal norms. But in truth, sacrifice, when misunderstood, often becomes less about generosity and more about conformity. It becomes a way of suppressing the self to fit into a mold defined by others. When you peel back the layers, you may find that what we often label as sacrifice is, in fact, fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of being seen as selfish. It is easier to give away pieces of yourself than to confront the discomfort of saying no, of asserting boundaries, of standing firm in your truth. Yet in doing so, you may lose sight of what truly matters: the balance between giving and preserving the core of who you are. True giving does not require the destruction of the self. It is not about draining your reserves to prove your love or value. Rather, it stems from abundance, a place where you are so deeply connected to your own needs and fulfillment that you can share freely without feeling depleted. Sacrifice, when viewed through the lens of obligation or martyrdom, does not nourish either party. It creates an imbalance, a transaction rooted in unspoken expectations or unacknowledged resentments. There is also a subtle trap within the illusion of sacrifice: the belief that it is virtuous to suffer. This idea suggests that the more you endure, the greater your moral standing. But suffering in and of itself is not a badge of honor. It does not inherently lead to growth, connection, or joy. True acts of service and love are not measured by the amount of pain they cause, but by the authenticity and intention behind them. The illusion of sacrifice is particularly pervasive in relationships, where we are taught that love requires compromise to the point of self-erasure. While compromise is indeed a natural part of human connection, it should never come at the expense of one's essence. When we give up too much of ourselves in the name of sacrifice, we risk losing the very qualities that drew others to us in the first place. It is also worth questioning who benefits from the sacrifices. Life is often compared to a river, ever-changing, dynamic, and ceaselessly moving forward. The metaphor captures something essential about existence: it cannot be controlled, only navigated. To live is to flow with life's river, learning to embrace its currents, eddies, and waves rather than fighting against them. Yet, for many, the instinct is to resist, to dam the river in an effort to shape it to our will, to make it conform to our expectations. The resistance begins when we cling to the illusion of certainty. We often strive to create a sense of stability in our lives, crafting plans and building structures we hope will endure. But like the river, life is inherently unpredictable. Its currents shift unexpectedly, washing away even the most carefully constructed plans. This unpredictability can be unsettling, but it is also what makes life vibrant and alive. The river's flow reminds us that growth and transformation arise not from rigid control, but from adaptability and openness. Flowing with life's river does not mean passivity. It is not about surrendering to every twist and turn without discernment or effort. Instead, it is about learning to move with intention, aligning your actions with the natural rhythms of life rather than struggling against them. A skilled kayaker does not conquer the river, they work with it, reading the currents, anticipating obstacles, and adjusting their course. In the same way, flowing with life requires awareness, flexibility, and a willingness to trust the process. There are times when the river is calm, its surface like glass reflecting the sky above. In these moments, life feels harmonious and serene. But there are also times when the river becomes turbulent, its waters churning with chaos. These moments test our resilience and our faith. The temptation is to panic, to grasp for control in an attempt to steady ourselves. Yet the river teaches us that the only way to navigate the rapids is to let go, to trust that the current will carry us forward if we remain present and engaged. Flowing with, and becoming whole. To become whole is not to achieve perfection, but to embrace the fullness of who you are. Wholeness is not about erasing flaws or eliminating struggles. It is about integrating every part of yourself, the light and the shadow, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, the joys and the pains, into a harmonious existence. It is a process of acceptance, of seeing yourself as complete not because you are flawless, but because you are real, human, and ever-evolving. The journey to wholeness begins with the recognition that we are often fragmented. Society, expectations, and our own fears lead us to divide ourselves into pieces, hiding the parts we believe are unworthy or unlovable. We wear masks to fit in, suppressing our true feelings and desires in an effort to conform. Over time, these fragmented pieces can feel like they belong to someone else, leaving us disconnected from our own essence. Becoming whole is an act of courage. It requires turning inward and facing the parts of ourselves we have denied or disowned. This process is not easy, for the pieces we push away often carry pain, shame, or fear. But these fragments are not our enemies. They are parts of our story, waiting to be acknowledged and understood. By bringing them into the light of awareness, we can begin to heal the wounds that keep us divided. Wholeness also demands that we release the illusion of external validation. It is tempting to look to others for a sense of completeness, to believe that a relationship, achievement, or possession will fill the gaps within us. But true wholeness comes from within. It is about finding peace in your own company, trusting your inner voice, and recognizing that you are enough as you are, even as you continue to grow. In becoming whole, we learn to embrace contradictions within ourselves. We are not singular beings. We are mosaics of experiences, emotions, and identities. To be whole is to honor this complexity, to hold space for joy and sorrow, certainty and doubt, strength and fragility. It is to recognize that these seemingly opposing forces are not at odds, but are all essential aspects of a rich and authentic life. This process is not about fixing yourself because you were never broken. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you have forgotten, lost, or hidden away. It is about weaving these pieces together into a tapestry that reflects the truth of who you are. Wholeness is not a final destination, but an ongoing practice, a commitment to showing up for yourself, moment by moment, with compassion and authenticity. To become whole is to remember that you do not need to fit into anyone else's definition of what it means to be complete. It is to trust your own journey, knowing that every experience, whether beautiful or challenging, is a thread in the fabric of your being. Through this process, you come to see yourself not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a masterpiece to be appreciated, ever-changing and ever-becoming. To choose oneself is an act of profound bravery, a journey of self-discovery, a defiance of norms, and a dance with the currents of life. It is about breaking free from the illusion of sacrifice, embracing interconnected autonomy, and flowing with the river of existence with trust and grace. In choosing herself, a woman does not turn away from the world, she turns toward it with authenticity. She becomes a beacon of possibility, showing that living fully and freely is not an act of selfishness, but a gift to the collective. For when she claims her wholeness, she invites others to do the same, rippling out like the currents of a river, shaping a world where individuality and connection coexist in harmony.